Parshas Yisro, the Torah tells us about Kabbalah Torah. The Ramban says, "V'yihu eineinu v'libeinu sham kol hayomim." Our eyes and our hearts should be there all our days. That people, at some point in history, recognized an interaction between a supreme power, a force that is real and relevant in our lives, and the multitude of a nation. The usual revelation that has happened millions and maybe billions of times is that the intelligence that created life in various dressings and various forms reveals itself to an individual within his perception, within his experience, within his consciousness, and he receives a vision, a recognition about life that is not available to others. And this is an interaction that's happening between the spirit of an individual and the higher spiritual powers, the spirit of all spirits. However, Matan Torah was something else. Matan Torah was an event where a collective of hundreds of thousands of people, maybe even in the millions, came to a realization and had an experience of clarity at the same time, together. And this event is the reason why we are sitting here tonight. Was it not for that event, nobody knows what the globe would have looked like today. But certainly very different. And so, our hearts and our eyes are looking to that event, are yearning for that event, to try to understand how does one get to know what's real. Because we all have a number of years to spend on this planet. We've spent some of our time, but we still have more that we can spend, and we can spend it as we please. We're in charge of time. We're in charge of a human spirit within a body for a period of time. And so, if we can only find out what's real, how nicely can we set ourselves up for our future? How well would it be for us if we understood what is real so that we know where to invest our time, where to invest our energy, where to invest our spiritual currency, our life, our everything. And so, in a moment, thousands of years ago, masses of people, tremendous amount of people, realized with pure vision, with absolute clarity, what is real in this world? What are we really up against? What are we fighting here? What is the problem? And they couldn't handle it. Not because the problem was so big that they were scared of it, but because the reality was so much better. The reality was so far deep into a place that is beyond the wildest human imagination, that the mere fact that these people came from slavery disallowed their brains, disallowed their nervous system to switch to those settings. Their body couldn't handle it. And so, when Klal Yisrael came to Har Sinai, they came K'ish Echad B'lev Echad. They came united as one people. Because all that is required in order for us to know the truth is to allow ourselves to be vulnerable and to be honest enough to discover who we really are and what we are really about and what is really important to us. Because those answers will lead us to trying to understand ourselves, trying to understand life. And as our shallow assumptions about life start being disproved, we're going to start realizing the deeper realities that are hiding behind those shallow assumptions. And so the only way to really start making progress is to start observing, is to believe enough, to start doing something in order to gain a deeper relationship with the truth. And so, the first place we know for sure that we should spend time and reality is going to reward that is to search for the truth. If we don't know the truth, if we don't know what's real, the next best thing to do is to search for what's real. Rather than investing energy trying to do things that we don't know the real basis for, we should try to find out the basis of all things to understand what is really happening to us. Because only if we get it right will we afterwards be proud of what happened while we were doing it. And so, the Svarim teach us, Reb Tzodok mentions it, that by Matan Torah, when Klal Yisrael heard Anochi Hashem Elokecho, the place where the voice was emanating from, the sound that was coming to their ears, where it says, V'chol ha'am roim es hakolos, they could see the sound was emanating from their own throats. They came to realization, each one individually and all of them together, as they were united as one, K'ish echad b'lev echad, that Anochi Hashem Elokecha, there is only one reality that drives all realities. There's only one singular will that causes all of reality to become the way that it is. And that realization was so deep, that realization was so pure, that they couldn't find a place for themselves. They didn't know where to exist. They saw that everything is one and they didn't know where to be. They didn't know where to place themselves. They couldn't understand. And yet Moshe Rabbeinu was able to go into this state and remain fully conscious. Kashi Yedaber Ish Yisrael, like a person speaking to a friend, Moshe Rabbeinu was able to enter these states because Moshe Rabbeinu's anova, Moshe Rabbeinu's purity of understanding himself appropriately from the beginning, made him the special vessel that could realize that he is nothing and be fine with it. He could continue to exist as nothing. Whilst Klal Yisrael wasn't ready to exist as nothing. Klal Yisrael said, if everybody is him, if everything is him, then where am I? Where do I live? And that weakness is what caused them, when they lost access to Moshe Rabbeinu, to afterwards fall to the ego. To afterwards look for some definition, for some way, for some understanding that's going to be what they worship, where they find comfort, where they find some type of guidance towards the purpose of life. And this is the absolute opposite of what they realized at Har Sinai. That all the guidance comes from within. Everything that was created in a perfect form. We just have to learn in order to know what our within really wants. The learning is not to bring an external burden to the person. The learning is to untie and unleash the real spirit that's inside of us. Because that's the only way that we'll have access to life. That's the only way that we'll ever be. That's the only way that we'll ever come out to interact with reality, which is the purpose of creation, that we should interact with reality, that we should use the beautiful balance that was created within our own individual selves that guide us to be kind and be gentle and be good and be caring and loving. This is a natural masterpiece that got created by none other than the one who created the sun or the moon or any of the stars or all the galaxies. And so this realization is now available to us because our parents, our great-grandparents, allowed this reality into their life, realized something about this, realized something about the power within a human spirit, the power of a neshama, that can take a person into realities that he hasn't imagined and he doesn't even know they exist. Because everything is in the mind of the one experiencing it. And this is how every generation has a different reality that they live in, that's completely different, that feels completely different. And they behave completely different, and they expect completely different, and they judge completely different. And it's each one individually based on what went into that brain. What did it see? What did it record? What does it think about life and reality? And being that we're so sophisticated, being that everything affects us so deeply, we should try to guard what comes into our minds, what comes into our hearts, so that we don't confuse our spirit, so we don't depress our spirit, so we don't make it harder for ourselves to live. And so every thought, everything we read, everything we listen to, it goes in somewhere, it's live, it's real. It grows, it's like growing a plant. The mind is very, very fertile ground. Everything that goes in grows. Everything that goes in has an impact on something. Everything that goes in becomes something. And at that source of that huge tree that you've created is the source, is the Anochi Hashem Elokecha, is the one that gave you the power to create. And with his power you created all that you created. It's his power that you use to think, even when you think against the world, it's still his power that we use. Because there's no other power. He's the only one that provides. And so Klal Yisrael came to realization, and this realization is the reason for everything else. From this realization come 248 mitzvahs that represent the 248 body parts, that represent what it is that we need to create spiritually in this world while we're here. How can we become the complete man that has all the limbs that the one that created man had envisioned for him? And the same thing, the 365 things that protect the Torah, that protect us from hurting each other or from hurting ourselves, so that we can guard what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us, so that we can make sure that it has the proper experience, so that we can have access to a body, to a mind that can respond properly to reality as it appears, to the events of life. And so Anochi Hashem Elokecha is the yesod of the whole Torah. It's the purpose of the whole Torah. It's the reason there is a Torah, is the reason we have a Torah. And everything comes in order to build this understanding, to build this realization. Lo yeh lechol yom acherim is the first protection. The truth is real. Nothing else is real. Don't start worshiping your imagination. Don't start coming up with stuff you need to worship, and on that account you cause damage to reality. And then, from that, comes the 365 loises, comes the 365 veins within which the blood goes around the body. This is the support that the body needs in order to exist. It needs direction. What is there to do? What is there to create? And it needs to know protection. What's not to do? What's not to create? And every mitzvah has a sichli purpose, meaning it has a psychological depth that touches the very core of our spirit, the very reason that we are here, the very reason that we are experiencing this very experience. And so within the mitzvahs is a message, is an understanding of what it means to be us and how do we operate, what causes us to be the way that we are. How can we improve? How can we make a better us? Because that's the reason we're here. We didn't come here to figure out how to make better technology or more comfortable houses or faster airplanes. That's not the reason we came. The reason we came is to figure out how do we make better humans. That's our purpose in this world. Each one of us came to this world to figure out how to make better humans. The first human he has to start with is himself, is living right inside his body with him. And that human needs to be perfected to a level that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can understand. Because none of us understand what a human being is. None of us have the proper respect for Yiddish and Neshama. None of us have the proper respect for anything. In fact, if we'll give the most respect we can muster, it still wouldn't come to a small percentage of the respect deserved for Yiddish and Neshama. And so we have to be able to aim beyond what we even think is possible, because what we think is possible is meaningless. And then we can start seeing that we have it in us. Our nervous system can give us the most perfect human being. There's no doubt and there's no question. It's only a matter of saying the right words into it. Because this is how we function. We function based on words. It's words that make us run. And therefore, when we have a revelation, when we have something that comes from beyond, it comes dressed up in words. Anochi Hashem Elokecho. How can little words contain such a tremendous experience, such a reality, such a life-changing paradigm where everything shifts into a new understanding, into a new life, into a new reality? How can words contain such a tremendous message? And the answer is, the words are only the key to your spirit. Your spirit can contain, because those who contained it the first time were just spirits, just like yours. And so the human spirit can contain. The words are just little messengers trying to awaken within your spirit something much, much bigger, something much more real. And this is the purpose of a revelation, is to go deeper into realizing what's already there, what's already true. It's not about revealing things that we didn't know. It's about revealing things we knew already and have long forgotten. Some things we've forgotten before we even started talking. And so these are the things we need to know, because these are the things that nature provided for us. These are the things that nature wanted us to have. And that's what would allow us to keep our natural bounds, so that we don't go out of bounds, so that we know what's real, so that we can understand ourselves. And so our hearts and our eyes always go back to Matan Torah, a moment where Klal Yisrael understood themselves. They were Kish Echad B'Lev Echad. They had no other interests. Nobody wanted to win. Nobody wanted to compete. Nobody wanted to be better than the other guy. They all just wanted to be together so that they can find the truth, so that they can find peace, so that they can enjoy their experience, because they want to be the best that they can be. And we can only be our best when we enjoy. When we're suffering, we're never our best. And so all suffering is a transition. All suffering is a way for us to come closer, so that one day we can be Kish Echad B'Lev Echad, so we can peel off all the klippas. We can peel off all the difficult sides of our personality through our suffering, so that we can realize that no, we just want to be nice. We don't care. We don't want to keep any cheshbonis or any judgments or any restrictions or any realities where we don't need to be, we don't want to get involved in. We just want to do what's right each moment so that we can create the best reality that HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows us to create, so that we can be the Anoichi that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be in this world, so that we can represent Him accurately, the way that He wants to be represented. So we should all be Zoicha, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us the insight and the koyach and the wisdom to do His will and to bring Mashiach Meir B'Yameinu.
Amen.
So you say it comes in words. So my thing is, when you're like inspired, it comes in words. But what about when it comes in feelings? Because to me, it doesn't come first in words.
Well, feelings are also usually related to words, meaning if you try to understand your feeling, there's going to be a story or something happening behind the feelings that cause you to feel a certain way. So those are sort of the letters that are driving the feeling. So it doesn't have to be fully manifested in words, but there are words that are within that you came to a certain realization, or you came to a certain revelation about something in order to feel happy about it, in order to feel different.
If we are the Anoichi, because that's all there is, so then when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is punishing, who is He punishing?
The Anoichi is punishing you.
How can Anoichi punish me? I am the Anoichi.
Well, don't you ever punish yourself?
That means HaKadosh Baruch Hu is punishing Himself.
If you punish yourself, it means that your mistaken understanding of yourself is sort of in conflict with your nature. So your nature would be HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and your understanding of yourself would be, let's say, your Yetzira or your evil inclination, or whatever it might be. And this clash is going to cause suffering in you.
But it's not happening in the Anoichi.
It's all the Anoichi, there's nothing else.
So how could it happen in the Anoichi?
Because the Anoichi is not fully conscious of his Anoichi-ness. As we can see, evidently, when you look at humanity. They're not conscious of who they are, so they're not playing their part. So then we'd say that in those areas where humanity is creating a shadow, the Anoichi is not visible. But he's still the one that's not visible, because there's nothing else to see. But the invisibility of his causes us suffering, because then we get it wrong. We walk into spiritual walls because we can't see. And then when we walk into a wall, we get hurt. That's just nature reacting to reality. So the less we understand ourselves, the more walls we're walking into.
But you spoke about the Jews had, having been enslaved, led their minds to be able to receive the Torah. But then on the other hand, to become one with that Anochi, Kirsh Echad Kalev Echad, and then be able to receive the Torah from there. So their minds were developed, but they weren't developed fully. They weren't developed enough to be able to hold on to that experience and not be able to be without Moshe Rabbeinu.
The suffering causes the heart to become softer. That's sort of the knife that cuts off the Ola Salev. Because people, because they went through suffering and they get traumatized, they lose their sensitivity. And then they cause other people trauma without feeling. But when they start suffering, then they start realizing that life is real and you shouldn't make other people suffer. So they gain a certain sensitivity. So that's like cutting off the Ola of the heart that doesn't allow the heart to feel. But then at the same time, as we need to have a developed heart, a feeling heart, we also need to have a sensitive brain that can tell the difference between what's real and what's not real, what's source and what's result, what's causing the other things to happen, to know the direction of cause and effect. And so in this area, when people are enslaved, they lose their sensitivity, they lose their understanding of what's happening to them, they lose their understanding of what life should be, because they never saw life in the proper manner. They always saw life as the underdog, they're always fighting against life. And so when people go through that, even though their heart might be at the proper sensitivity already, and that's why Klal Yisrael are considered Rachmanim, Baishonim, Gam Lechasodim, because they have a softer, gentler way about them, their mind couldn't yet tell the sensitivities of certain beliefs and how they're going to affect their bodies, and their minds didn't have the confidence to be able to sort of create their own destiny without feeling doubt and feeling fear and feeling disconnected. So they needed a leader, and when they didn't have the leader, they were looking for leadership. They were looking for something to hold on to, even if deep inside maybe they knew it wasn't real, but they weren't developed enough to be able to do it on their own. They couldn't pass that. So that showed that they still needed further purification, and their brains needed to be further developed. And all of that has happened already. Like now we're talking about thousands of years, and we're talking about people that read the amount of text that the whole Torah was. Some people can read that in a week, like every week. So the brains are much more familiar with text in a very different way, not necessarily in a qualitative way, but in a quantitative way. And so today, if we had a Moshe Rabbeinu, obviously all the tests would look very different, and the way that we would go about them would be very different. It's not the same game that it was back then, but because we don't have the vision, we don't know what to do with it. We need the person that's going to take that to figure out what it really means, and for that we really need to understand the Torah appropriately. People need to learn the real Torah, the depth of the Torah, the secrets of the Torah, to understand what it really means and how that applies to today. What does that mean for us?
So like the famous question, about destiny and how much control
Right.
we have, like what's your outlook?
I think that moment by moment we have full control. As soon as we want to control other moments, we have zero control. And so usually we look at it more of activity based, like saying, do I have the control to do this or not to do this? And that's not necessarily a fair question. Some people are different than others, and they have different challenges in different areas. But moment by moment, a person can choose how does he want to spend that moment. And that's really the moment of Bechira, because it's only what's inside of him that's going to cause him to choose. It's only the ingredients that Hashem created in that person, that's what's going to result in his choice. So that means that ultimately he carries also the responsibility of what he does, because he's the one choosing, which means that he's creating a reality. Then the result of that is he lives in that reality. He lives in a reality where he did X, and that has consequences on our imagination and on how we live. So everything is already built in the way that it's going to play out. A neshama never has to go and get an update from above saying, hey, you just said this, I don't know how to react to this, give me a minute here. I got to go to the database and see what is a human being doing in a case like that. The brain always has some way of figuring out what comes next, and it just makes it look so natural that we don't even assume it could have been any other way.
So the other famous question is why does Hashem create us, need us? I'm saying if he knows everything and all what's going to...
He doesn't need us, he wants to share with us, but he can only share with us when we're ready, and this is the pain right now, that he wants to share but we're not ready. It's like a fruit that's not fully ripe yet. So we know it's a fruit, we know it's there, but it's not doing what it's supposed to do yet. It doesn't have that flavor. So humanity doesn't have their flavor yet. Humanity right now is like
It's not boring for him? He knows everything that's going to happen?
I think he has a different type of entertainment. I don't think boredom is one of the things that he is concerned with. Mm-hmm.
I know these are stupid questions, but I'm just thinking like a child right now. I don't
right,
know,
you're trying to
questions that I never had answered.
You're trying to understand him. Yeah, but the usual advice I give is don't try to understand him. Try to understand what he created already, because he already did it. So we don't have to ask him, well, if this is going to be the reality, are you going to be bored? Are you not going to be bored? He decided that he's doing it, and he already did it. So if he's committed, we might as well commit also.
It's been created. Stop trying to say what is.
Yeah. Most people are very busy with what should have been and what could have been, instead of noticing what is, because there happens to be a very important version. No, it's when we think about higher things, sometimes we become curious, but there's no way to really quench that thirst, because nobody knows, and we can't even relate to him. We don't even know what it means to be him. Boredom is just a concept that he created in order to keep us moving. So all these things don't even apply to him in the first place. What we're experiencing are all biological functions. He's not biological. He created biology.
How do you remove a klipa?
A klipa, like klipot in general mean negative feelings about life, let's say. It would be called a klipa when we're talking about the heart. So all our negative feelings about life would stand between our heart and reality and wouldn't let us be positive, wouldn't let us be nice, wouldn't let us, forgive. All these. So to remove a klipa means that we're willing to go away from those ways of seeing life, and we want to settle, want to have rest at any cost. We realize the importance of peace, and we realize that nothing could be worth arguing, because when we argue we don't have life, and if we don't have life we got nothing. So it's better to take any form of life rather than get into conflict with life or with people. So this is removing klipat. For some people, they'll only come to this conclusion once they've gone through suffering. So that causes them to soften up and stop trying to force life to be the way you think it should be, and let life be the way that it is, and you live with that. But other people get to it through learning, through understanding, so they can save themselves the trouble of going through the suffering. But it's a combination of both for all of us.
Both what?
Learning and suffering. Because as long as we're not in a perfect world, we're suffering. As long as we don't have Mashiach, we're suffering. We might not notice that we're suffering because we don't understand what we deserve and who we really are. But it's suffering as far as the truth is concerned. It's not the way it should be.
You said the more you know yourself, the more you could do God's will. How do you get to know yourself?
First, by being able to have access to your emotions, to know how not to hurt yourself, how not to hurt other people, how not to be something that causes pain in humanity. That's the first will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's ultimately what He created us for, is that we should not coexist. And that's why Ki'ish Echad B'Lev Echad comes before Matan Torah, meaning we can't even understand the wisdom of what's happening if we don't first know how to be calm and coexist in a way that's beneficial to everybody. Afterwards, when we want to be even better, that's when we can learn wisdom to understand who are you really, what do you really want, what is ultimately in your best interest. And that's what the Torah is here for. Torah is here to teach us about who we really are, so that we can collectively create one man, that Klal Yisrael can be Ki'ish Echad, like one man, one big person, that has the same will. Everybody understands the will and works together to create that will, to manifest that reality.